He went on to falsely claim that the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, hid documents from him and his team. And yet in another post, Trump went after his former lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, who we know will be a key witness, calling him a disgraced attorney and a felon. But we know that this is how Trump operates when he is desperate and when the heat is turned up on him. He deflects and points the finger at everyone else around him. On Friday, Judge Merchan rejected Trump's fourth attempt at a delay just this week. In his ruling, he said, quote, defendant appears to take the position that his situation and this case are unique and that the pretrial publicity will never subside. However, this view does not align with reality. Joining me now to discuss this, David Henderson, civil rights attorney and a former prosecutor. David, it's great to have you back on the show. So before we get into the specifics of the trial, let's note this is the first ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president. Put that in proper context for us. How significant of a moment is this for our country?
First, Eamon, good to see you, too. I can't overstate how significant it is simply because lawyers don't like surprises and lawyers don't like innovative things. We do best when we're dealing with a situation that we've seen before, and so we can reasonably anticipate what's likely to happen. Because a president has never been on trial before, and certainly never one with a personality quite like former President Trump's, no one knows for sure exactly how things are going to play out in terms of jury selection or what to expect from him once a trial actually starts. But he's already gotten away with more than I would have told you any defendant could reasonably expect to without being put behind bars waiting for his trial date.
David, Trump has said that he would testify. That remains to be seen. I'd love to get your legal expertise as to whether or not that is a smart decision. But if he does, the reason why I asked that question is because he would be subject to cross-examination by the prosecution. How disastrous would that be for Trump? What would that even look like for the prosecution?
You know, generally speaking, Eamon, I think I'm in the minority. I think it's good to put your defendant on stand because that's what people are used to from watching TV. Now, any good lawyer will tell you it's different in real life than the way it is on TV. But the truth is, people like my mom who've been watching Law and Order for the past few decades, they just expect it. They expect to hear from the person who's standing trial. So I generally lean towards doing it. However, it can only work when you have a client that you can control, and you cannot control former President Trump. And I think that part of what's happened is he's developed so much hubris for making these hyperbolic statements to the press and getting away with it that he thinks he can get away with it inside of a courtroom. And what we've seen is he consistently fails as a result of that. And for that reason, I do think it would be a disaster to put this witness on the stand.
You know, David, unlike the E. Jean Carroll defamation trials, Trump will have to be present every day in the hush money trial because it is a criminal case. Will this trial inevitably become another opportunity for him to campaign? Will the lack of visibility, if you will, inside the courtroom give him the added advantage of being able to manipulate the narrative outside of the courtroom?
I don't think anything inside the courtroom is going to help him manipulate the narrative outside of the courtroom. I do think we'll see all the same antics occur that we saw before. But to your point, him being inside the courtroom every day is a huge disadvantage to his defense. When you see things like him being absent from the courtroom, that's not simply because he doesn't want to be there. Any smart trial lawyer would say, you know what, you have a habit of making faces, you make noises, you can't help yourself with attacking the judge. It's better if you are only there when you literally have to be there. Given what you showed in your opening clip, like him already making statements about the judge, if you start whining, making faces, pouting in front of the judge, what tends to happen in a trial is things stop going your way with important evidentiary rulings that can affect the outcome of the case.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. How important is the conduct inside the courtroom for Trump, right? Like, he knows in previous cases there was the theatrics and he can get away with it. But in a criminal case, that matters. His behavior will matter to the outcome of this trial.
It will, and it mainly matters for the jury. You got to remember, the people who serve on a jury, they're everyday hardworking folks. And it's hard for them to relate to someone who would be disrespectful in an environment like a courtroom, because most of them are not wealthy enough and powerful enough to get away with that kind of behavior, and they know that. So when they see someone behave that way inside of a courtroom, they tend to dislike that person. And that's why I always tell my witnesses the most persuasive thing you can be inside of a courtroom is polite, respectful, and deferential, especially to the judge and the staff who work inside the courtroom. That's already proven to be a challenge to former President Trump.
Let me ask you finally, David, up until this point, Trump has been able to successfully delay his other cases. He tried to do it with this one, but has failed. It's safe to say this is the only trial that is going to, the only case going to trial before the election. What does this tell us about a two-tier justice system, and certainly the way people perceive there to be a two-tier justice system? This guy was able to delay. And this trial, which was supposed to be the one that goes at the very end, is now the one that's going first.
That's right. Not only is this one the one that's going first, this is the one where if he could have picked, he would have chosen for this one to go first. And we assign so much of this to the fact that he is a former president. Yes, that does play a huge impact with regard to what we're talking about, Eamon. But at the end of the day, you're also seeing what the justice system looks like when someone can afford a lawyer to go the distance and do what they tell that person they want to do. If you can afford a lawyer, let alone a good lawyer, you can actually put up a much stronger defense than you would think. And I've just seen it throughout the course of my career. People have accomplished things that I was told, well, nobody beats the feds. I can name 3 people off the top of my head that I've encountered during my career who have, and I know this isn't a federal trial, but it still puts in context what you can do when you can afford a really good lawyer. And we're going to see that play out during jury selection, at least over the next week, maybe the next 2.
All right, so I had one more question. I thought it was going to be the last one, but I do have one more I want to squeeze in there. How do you do jury selection? How do you even pick a jury when you're dealing with somebody as famous or as infamous as Donald Trump?
This is really where it's going to come down to the skill of the lawyers inside the courtroom. We talk about people being unbiased and impartial. Everyone is biased. Everyone is partial. What you want to do really with this jury selection is pick people who have the strength of character to convict a former president. The reason he's on Truth Social making all the statements that he is because it makes people feel an incredibly high amount of pressure. And most people with the common sense to know how that may play out in their lives are going to want to run from serving on this jury. And the people who might end up serving on the jury, when they realize what might be at stake for them, they may be inclined to say, you know what, I think it's wrong, but I just don't think it's worth it for me to be put on blast for the next year or 2 because I voted to convict this man. That's what you're thinking about when you're picking this jury.
All right, David Henderson, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for breaking it down for us. Greatly appreciate it.